All you.
Great. Hello, I'm your Capital Region State Vice President, Brianna Hickman, and I am so excited to host today's session. We appreciate the many individuals and organizations who support Virginia FBLA by sponsoring our activities and programs, including Midlothian High School, Shenandoah Region FBLA, Snow Junior and King Inc. in Norfolk, and Wakeland Manor in Winchester. You can use the chat function feature to comment and ask questions that will be addressed at the end of the presentation. For this session, we recommend that you change your Zoom view to side-by-side option so that you can see our presenter and her presentation at the same time. Today's presenter is a consultant, professional speaker, and a full-time believer in the power of culture to drive performance and profit. She uses her expertise to coach leaders on how to deal with culture in order to build strong teams and outperform the competition. And she trains organizations to speak the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. Not one to shy away from a challenge, she recently walked on a treadmill for 24 hours straight to raise money for the construction of Camp Trivia, Girl Scout Western Oklahoma's new urban camp and STEM center. Please welcome Diana Rogers Jaeger.
All right. Thank you for having me. You know, as a business owner, I'm very excited to speak with all of you because you are the next generation of business owners and business leaders. And I'm glad I have this opportunity to talk with you about your future as volunteers. There are more than, oh, I don't know, my PowerPoint isn't advancing. Brian, do you know what's going on there? Sorry about that.
I don't, because it's sharing your screen, so I see that.
All right, let's just try this again here. Okay, I guess it was just stuck on something. Sorry about that. So there are more than 1.5 million nonprofits registered with the IRS in the United States. And on the website, volunteermatch.org, there are more than 128,000 organizations actively looking for volunteers right now. So whether you are looking to help people, animals, or our planet, there is no shortage of volunteer opportunities that could really use your time and your talent. So when I was your age, I had a lot of adults in my life encouraging me to, volunteer for this and volunteer for that. At school, we had, school administrators saying, sign up for the blood drive this week. I had youth group leaders at my church saying, help build a house this weekend for Habitat for Humanity. And then I had teachers at school encouraging us to sign up to be mentors through Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And so lots of volunteer opportunities were coming my way on a regular basis, sometimes weekly. And I'm sure many of you can relate with that. And I did sign up for a lot of things because my parents had raised me that we had a duty to give back and that we should help those who are less fortunate. And also I had adults telling me that, volunteer work looks really good on college and scholarship applications, right? You've heard that yourself. And of course, I had a third reason that often came up as a factor on whether I volunteered, and that was free pizza, right? So free pizza was sometimes a big draw for why I would volunteer somewhere. And I'm thinking I'm not alone in this. So let's take a quick poll to see how many of you have signed up to volunteer just for free pizza. So your options are, you have 3 options. Yes, more times than I would like to admit. 2, only when I was broke or starving at the time. Or 3, never, winky face. So this is a very scientific poll, and I ask that you take it very seriously. So if you'll just take your time and see which one of those 3 options best fits you. Brian, I'll let you help me on how much time you think we should give everyone to make sure everyone gets an opportunity. Okay, let's see those results. So the majority has never done it just for free pizza. So I guess I am in the minority, but you know, with the winky face, that may be in jest. So there is, you know, free pizza. Sometimes it's friends. That's the big factor for people. Some people it's just whether they have free time. So there are a lot of factors that go into it, and pizza being one of them. But seriously, I think though that whichever volunteer organizer first realized that free pizza will get a lot of free labor from teenagers should probably be inducted into the National Nonprofit Hall of Fame, because it does tend to draw in quite a crowd. So, oh, it's doing it again. This is really strange. I don't know here. Okay. So there I was in high school, volunteering for different organizations doing different things. And if you could describe my volunteer history in one word, that word would be random, without method or conscious decision. And I will have to say my college volunteer history was like that in many ways as well. And it may have continued that way to this day. I don't know. It may have, if I hadn't received some life-changing advice. So about a year after I graduated college from the University of Oklahoma and was working full-time, I was accepted into Leadership Oklahoma City's leadership group for young professionals. We were given leadership skills that would prepare us to lead in our community and also to serve on the board of directors of a nonprofit. And during our monthly leadership classes, we had guest speakers, business leaders, and community leaders who would come in and give us their words of wisdom. And so one of them gave this advice. He said, instead of volunteering at a bunch of different organizations, take time to reflect on your interests and how you want to make a difference in the world, your impact. And then, based on your answers to those questions, then choose a nonprofit that best fits that and that you'll volunteer with for the long term. And so that woke me up, because he said the word long term, and what I had been doing was very sporadic. I was an episodic volunteer. I would do one thing here for a couple hours or 1 hour. I really was not looking or thinking long term at all. And so I stopped to think about, okay, taking this advice, you know, what are my interests? And I thought about it a lot, and I decided I definitely wanted to volunteer with kids. And then I decided I wanted to do something outdoors related. And the reason for that is because I spent a lot of my childhood summers doing things like backpacking and rock climbing and whitewater rafting. And it was a lot of fun, but it also gave me practice in risk taking and in overcoming my fears. And so, for example, at the age of 9 was when I actually went rappelling for the first time. And there I was, this tiny little girl, because I'm short and petite, this tiny little girl, like standing on the edge of this 70-foot rock cliff. And the scaredy cat inside me was screaming at me like, don't do it, you're gonna die. Because the only thing standing between me and certain death was a piece of rope. But thankfully, my dad was also standing next to me, you know, coaching me through it, telling me to trust him and to trust the equipment. And so finally I did, and I braced my feet against the rock wall and leaned back into thin air and just praying that the equipment would work. And I took my first death-defying steps down that cliff wall. And when I safely got to the bottom, I had this feeling that I was a complete badass. I felt like I could do anything, because if I could do that, surely there was nothing that I couldn't do. And so thinking about that feeling and how that feeling really stuck with me, it related to what I decided the impact that I wanted to create. And that was to make other girls feel like badasses too. So I wanted to help build girls' self-confidence through outdoor adventures. So having the answers to those two questions, the interests that I had and the impact that I had, I began my research on what organization would be the best fit for what I wanted to accomplish as a volunteer. And my research led me to Girl Scouts. I was actually not a Girl Scout growing up, so I was completely new to what Girl Scouts was about. But after doing my research, I realized that it was the best fit for me long term. And so that decision that I made that day, I had no idea that it would lead to my 15-year history with Girl Scouts Western Oklahoma. And today I serve as president of the board of directors. And so I started volunteering with Girl Scouts, and my first role as a volunteer was as a troop leader. I had a group of girls. It started about 10 and then grew to about 23, and I had some co-leaders helping me. So I took the girls in my troop on all sorts of outdoor adventures. We went camping, we went hiking, we went horseback riding. So we did a lot of fun outdoorsy things. And I got to see my girls bloom into young women of courage, confidence, and character. So right away, I really was seeing the impact that I had set out to make, and it felt so good. And then when I was a troop leader, I was invited to be part of the strategic planning committee one year through my council, and I participated in a retreat to help us come up with our upcoming strategic plan. So I volunteered for that, and it was a wonderful experience. Then a couple of years later, I was asked to serve on the board of directors. And the neat thing about being on the board is that my decisions no longer just impacted the girls in my troop. I was part of a board that was making decisions that impacted all 8,000 girls in our council. And then as a board member, I also served on our board's executive committee, first as secretary, then as board development chair, then as fund development chair, and then as president-elect. And then also when I was a board member, I helped co-found our council's young professionals group. This was in my late 20s, trying to get more young people involved in the Girl Scouts mission. And I'm really proud to say that through some of the events that our group held, some fundraising events, we were able to raise enough money to start a Gold Award Scholarship Fund. And it was the first one that our council had. So we were really doing something as a first and giving back to girls who are earning their Gold Award. And this is a huge deal because Gold Award is the highest honor that a Girl Scout can earn in Girl Scouting. And it was just sad that we didn't have a scholarship to offer them before. But through the Young Professionals Group, we started that scholarship fund, and then we were able to turn it into an endowment years later with some fundraising through some other events. So that was very exciting. And so because my volunteer roles went deeper, I had greater responsibilities. But with those greater responsibilities, provided greater opportunities for leadership development. So being able to serve on a board with business and community leaders, with smart, capable people who were leaders in their own areas of expertise, I was able to observe them and learn from their different leadership styles. Because there is no one right leadership style. There are many different forms of leadership styles that are effective. And it has to do with your personality and your skill sets and how you deal with people. And so observing and learning from all those different leaders that I served with, I was able to make and develop my own leadership style that was very effective. And then also, I was able to develop skill sets that I wouldn't have been able to get from just my career alone. Because in my career, I wasn't doing a lot of things like fundraising. I wasn't doing succession planning. So I really was able to develop leadership skills that I would not have been able to if I had just been focusing on those in my career. So my volunteer roles really supplemented the types of leadership skills that I was developing in myself. And also, through the meeting, through the committees and the board, I was interacting with amazing men and women who ended up, some of them became my mentors, and then some of them became my champions. And so that was another great of giving back, but also learning from them and being mentored by them. And then serving as chair of many different committees, it really gives you the opportunity to hone your skills in running effective meetings, which is such an important part of being a leader. I also learned how to use Robert's Rules of Order effectively, And then I was able to develop a skill that is crucial, which is how to motivate volunteers. And I say it's crucial because if you can motivate volunteers, people who aren't required or paid to be there, you have the leadership skills to lead anywhere. I'm going to say that again because it's important. I promise you that if you can motivate volunteers, people who aren't required or paid to be there, you really do have the leadership skills to lead anywhere. So as you can see from this slide, so I started as troop leader, and then I went deeper and deeper, and then there I am at the bottom as board president. And I have to say that if you are going to volunteer somewhere, of course you have to have fun along the way, because there's just no way that you're going to stick with something long term if you're not having fun. And so through my years volunteering with Girl Scouts, I have so many fond memories of spending time with people who shared my passions and my interests, and we had a lot of fun along the way. And I will share that some of my favorite Girl Scout memories include, see the big picture right there was a 5-day canoe trip, overnight canoe trip in Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness in Minnesota. Up in the top right, that was me wild caving with a bunch of teenagers here in Oklahoma. The one below that was with my Girl Scout troop, and I really had fun teaching them how to set up a tent and build a campfire. Many of them had never done any of those things before. And then at the bottom, that's at Girl Scouts USA headquarters, and I've traveled to New York City 3 times to meet Girl Scouts from around the country. So it's been a lot of work, but there's been way more fun along the way. And so you have to find something that will also bring you joy. So a couple of years ago, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority was building a proposed path was going to take it straight through our Camp Cookie Land day camp property. And if they didn't go through our camp, they were going to have to go through a neighboring housing addition. So we had 2 choices before us. We could either sell our camp, or we could fight them and have them go around our camp through that housing addition. So we wanted to teach our girls about advocacy and involve them in the decision-making process. So we brought a bunch of girls into our office, our headquarters, and our CEO took them through some advocacy programming. And at the end of it, they decided they were willing to sell our Camp Cookie Land, because they just didn't want to have to displace those people in the neighboring housing addition from their homes. So they decided that it was worth selling our Camp Cookie Land. And so we sold that camp for $3.2 million, and the board decided to use that money as seed money to build a $12.2 million urban camp and STEM center right in the middle of Oklahoma City. And it was such a great thing because most of our members in our council, even though we're Western Oklahoma, most of them live in the Oklahoma City metro area. So having an urban camp in Oklahoma City would provide easy access to enhanced outdoor programming. And then the STEM center piece of it would allow us to teach STEM skills to girls and inspire them to seek a career in STEM fields. And Girl Scouts as an entire movement has actually pledged to put 2.5 million girls into the STEM pipeline by 2025. And so this STEM center would help us get the numbers towards achieving that goal. So here we are looking to build this amazing facility in Oklahoma City that would serve Western Oklahoma, but girls from all across the country would be able to use it as well. Because of my passion this project, when it came time to having people on the Property Task Force Committee, I raised my hand because I definitely wanted to be part of that. Because the Property Task Force Committee was in charge of overseeing the design and the construction. And then I also did a little help to the Capital Campaign Committee, which is responsible for raising the millions of dollars we needed to build that camp. And so I was able to do my own fundraising, which was mentioned in my bio, which was that 24-hour treadmill marathon where I walked nonstop except for very quick bathroom breaks where I would run off the treadmill and jump back on. And so I had never done anything like that before. I didn't quite know if I would make it to the end, what shape my body would be in at the end of it. But it was worth it because I wanted to help raise money for our Camp Trevera. And I also wanted to increase awareness and let people know that this was coming to our city. And so I'm glad I did because it did end up raising over $20,000. Camp Trevera will open later this year. And I consider it to be my legacy because I started volunteering for Girl Scouts, wanting to build girls' confidence through outdoor adventures. And here I am today, directly involved in building an urban camp and STEM center, which is the first of its kind in the nation, by the way, that will have that exact impact, but also do it on a much larger scale and do it for generations to come. And so that is what I want you to think about when you are volunteering, is that I want you to think about how you can do a deep dive into your volunteer role. So as you can see, my volunteer path went from random to a deep dive myself. And so before you volunteer for your next volunteer engagement, I want you to take the time and answer these 3 questions first. The first one being, what are my interests? And so please take the time to write these questions down. What are my interests? What are you passionate about? What brings you joy? Then the second question is, what impact do I want to make in the world? So this is thinking about, if you could leave a legacy, what impact might you want to make? And the third question is, what organization is the best fit for me long-term? Because you often make decisions differently when you're looking at just a day, a week, a month from now versus looking a year or 5 years down the road. So it can really shape your decision making. And so I really urge you, before you hop on to your next volunteer work that you're doing, whether it's in person or virtually these days, please take the time to answer these 3 questions first. I want you to really think about what it is that you want to do, and also think about how it can tie into your purpose. You were put here on earth for a reason. So what reason is that? And what are you going to do to make this world a better place? And think about tying your volunteer work into your purpose. So what I don't want to see you do is signing up for this and signing up for that, and just things that come along, kind of what I was doing back in the day. Because if you do, you're always going to stay at the surface. Instead, dive down. Dive down so you can have a richer volunteer experience. And because the deeper you go, the more likely you are to discover one of the most rewarding treasures in volunteering, which is having a big enough impact that you create a legacy, that you leave a legacy for others who come behind you. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions from you all. And if you want to reach out to me, there's my contact information. I would love to hear from some of you.
Thank you, Ms. Jaeger, for helping us navigate the sea of opportunities available to us.
My pleasure.
Now let's see if our attendees have any questions.
We have one question here from Reagan, and I think this will be a good one for you to address because Diana, you were talking about really focusing on one kind of group, knowing your interest and your experience. She asked, what if your interest or the job you want to do later in life are not offered as a community service opportunity? Is it okay to do random community service, or does that look bad on applications? And Reagan, you may want to chime in too, to maybe give us a little insight on what career path you're looking at, because that may help us also help determine what that looks like for you too.
Hi, yes. So I know what I want to do in the future. I want to be a forensic psychologist. And even like with just regular law, like police officers, they don't offer that like as opportunities now, just for like safety reasons. So I do opportunities on a random like you used to, but does that look bad on like applications when I'm going for a job or to college?
Well, I will say there's a lot of students who aren't doing anything. So you're definitely a step above candidates who don't have any, volunteer work that they've done. But something you can think about too is if you are wanting to be more targeted and having it relate to your career, is speaking to people in the career field who are doing the job and asking them like, what are volunteer opportunities are out there that I could be doing that relate to this career and the skill sets that I'm trying to develop. So you may not have an idea of what is out there that would tie in, but they probably sure do. And so I will tell you this, adults love it when eager students call them and say, hey, can I talk to you for 20 minutes? Can I meet you for coffee? Can I have a short meeting with you? I'd like to learn more about your career. And they're more like, and you can answer that question, and they're very likely to at least, point you in some different directions or give you the contact information of other people who may be able to point you in a better direction if they don't have the answer. So I think that would be calling someone in the field who's doing the job would be a great way to connect with a professional, and then also give them the opportunity to give you ideas for what you could be doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Shadeja, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Because I think it may kind of tie back into kind of what Reagan was asking a little bit as well.
So basically what I was saying is, should you like volunteer for like a specific career goal, or like if you don't know what you actually want to do for your career, does it matter where you volunteer it? Because I kind of have an idea on what I want to do with my career, but I don't know like what to do after that. Like I did a bunch of volunteer opportunities, but it's never been related to like what I actually wanted to do, but kind of needed to do for many programs that I was involved with.
Okay. Well, I will have to say that you don't have to necessarily tie in your volunteer work to your career. I mean, that can definitely have some overlaps there. I mean, for me, working with kids and doing something related to outdoors had nothing to do with my career, which back then was in public relations. And so that is a path you can go down, but don't feel like you have to tie it into your career, because that's what internships are a great way to develop skills related to career. And yes, you can do that with volunteer work too, but if there's just a passion that you have that is unrelated to what you want to do as a career, because a lot of us, have hobbies and interests that just maybe don't pay well, or just they're separate things, what you do for your career and what you do for fun and what brings you joy. And so don't feel like you have to do your volunteer work related to your career. As I mentioned previously, I mean, that is something you can do, but hey, if you just want to do something different and, discover a different area of your interest and dig deeper into that, don't feel like you have to make those two things mesh together unless you don't want to. And with my presentation, I'm not against, in the beginning, if you really aren't as clear about your interests and your impact, it is good to get out there and try different things, because you don't know what's really going to like grab you. And you're so young, you haven't had all these life experiences yet. While you've had many, there's still a lot more you haven't experienced. So if you're in that place where you can't really answer the first two questions about what your interests are that you want to focus on and what impact you want to have, then it's okay to do different things, to kind of try things out if you can't answer those two questions. But once you can really hone in on those two questions, then you're ready to kind of think long-term and what organization best matches what your interests and the impact you want to have.
Okay. We have another question from Ms. Mills. Do you have suggestions for how we as an organization can help our local community businesses recover from the economic impact of COVID-19?
Through volunteer work? Such a good question. I think, with volunteer work, what you really want to do is fill a need, right? So if you're not clear on really what the need is, then it's good to talk maybe with some small business owners and think about, ask them, what are your greatest needs right now? If you had volunteers willing to help you, what types of things would you want them to be working on? And so I think that is the first step, instead of just thinking like, what can I be doing? It's like, well, what's the need you can fill? And so that can really make sure that your skill sets align with what is needed by business leaders if you're really looking to provide help. And also having that conversation may spur some ideas of what you could be doing. So for example, let's say there's an animal shelter and a lot of people aren't coming in right now to look at animals, to adopt them. And so maybe you have some video skills where they could shoot the video for you, send it to you, and then you can create some sort of promo video highlighting, an animal, their name, all their qualities, and encouraging people to adopt them and really promoting all the different animals that are available for adoption. So that's something you could do virtually while helping that organization, which is, kind of a business, to try to get more of their animals adopted. But ideas like that may spur on how your talents and your skill sets can fit with their need. And you may be able to share, like, what if I did this? Would this be of value to you? But I think a really great place to start is speaking with the business owner, or, someone at that company to figure out what their need is.
All right, thank you. We have another question from Laura Morgan. What do you think is the biggest reason that some people are hesitant to begin volunteering?
I really can't speak for a lot of people, but if I were to guess, I think it's just something that maybe hasn't been a part of what they did growing up. So for me, being involved in church, that was just something my family did. We would volunteer through church. And so when I got to high school, it was just easy for me to start volunteering through high school organizations and opportunities. So I think maybe it's just something they haven't been exposed to. And with a lot of people, right, it's like we don't always want to just step out of our comfort zone. And so unless you have like a family member or a friend who's like, hey, come join me for this volunteer work, let's help out this person or this organization this weekend. I think it's just kind of the unknown. It's just something probably they haven't done before. And so if you know people like that, the best thing you can do is invite them along next time you go do some volunteer work.
Thank you. We have one more question from Rachel, and it is, what is the best way to reach out and search for volunteer opportunities?
Well, I will have to say, stop right there, because that kind of goes back to just signing up for the available things that are out there. So really you want to kind of be more intentional about, like I said, your interests, your impact. And because you could just go to volunteermatch.org and just, scroll and think like, oh, I could do that, or I could do this. But that is going back to being random instead of intentional. And so think about that. Maybe you can create your own volunteer opportunities. So instead of limiting yourself to what some organization has posted on some website, I think it's so powerful to, like I said, talk to someone in an organization who knows what their needs are, and then figuring out what you could do to help. Because there's a lot of websites out there, but then it's the same thing. You're just signing up for the things that already exist, and it may not be really fit in with what you're trying to accomplish. But volunteermatch.org, if I had to give you one, I would say would be a good place to start.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your questions. A recording of this session will be available on our Virginia FPLA YouTube channel. We hope to see you next week for Monday's session, More Than a Thank You Note, presented by Nova Region Advisors, Stephanie Holt. There's 1 week left, so remember to keep logging your hours in our FLY program. Take advantage of every chance to create a world of opportunity.